Hello and welcome into Dolphins versus Patriots, the final yard post game. Final score: the Miami Dolphins 34, New England Patriots 15. We will get into everything that we saw on the field today for the Miami Dolphins as they cruise to their third straight victory. But before we do that, I do want to talk a little bit about Prize Picks, the number one way to play daily fantasy sports. All you need to do is take a player, take a stat, pick over or under, and boom, you've got yourself a lineup with 2 to 4 players in any sport, across every sport. The best way to play daily fantasy sports. Use promo code 5 for a $50 bonus when you play your first lineup of $5 or more on Prize Picks. That's promo code 5, FIVE. All right, so to start things off, Dolphins 34, Patriots 15. I do feel a little entitled here to take a victory lap. I'm not sure if you saw the pregame show.
Yep, I was watching.
But when we were doing our score predictions, I said 34-17. Patriots get a couple scores late, off by 2 points.
Yeah, that's pretty close. That was good.
But the Miami Dolphins come away here with a pretty resounding victory, I would say. I don't really think there's much you look at and you're displeased with in this one. Tua is operating the offense right now at a level higher than I think I've ever seen him operate Mike McDaniel's offense. The running game wasn't quite what you would want, but Alec Ingold was one of those he's active on paper, not really on the field situations. The defense looked really good today. I think the defensive line got home with, sending 4 on a lot of plays. And when they did send that extra pressure, it was effective. Chop Robinson had himself a career day with a sack and a half, and he just looked unblockable off the edge. Tyrell Dodson, I was really impressed with him coming in relief of Anthony Walker once he went down. I mean, this just kind of felt like, Anthony Walker injury aside, this really felt like the best case scenario for this game. You couldn't have asked for it to play out any better, if you ask me. And Coach Eric, I've gone on my diatribe here so far about how I felt about the game to this point. Let's see. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, this was best case scenario for the Dolphins going into a short week, going on the road to Green Bay. They really needed to get out to a early lead here. Of course, you would have liked to see Tua be able to stay out of the game at the end there as opposed to coming back in. But, they were able to keep him fairly safe outside of that one that he probably could have thrown away. But in terms of, getting out to that early lead, just clinging to it and not having to dig too deep in the playbook on either side of the ball, that's exactly what you would have been hoping for against a team like the Patriots. Like I said, short week going on the road, you don't want to be, fighting tooth and nail against a bad team before you have to, turn around and make that trip. So I think that, this was a great performance all around. You mentioned Tua, and, yes, the run game wasn't going that well. Obviously we'd like to be able to, run even when a team knows it's coming. But at the same time, like that's kind of the way that complementary football works. We talked earlier in the year about so many teams playing the too high safety look and how well the running game was working against that. And now, this week the Patriots were a lot of single high look. So they, when you got that single high look, you got an extra guy in the box. It makes the counts a little tougher to run against, and that's what you saw today. And sure, it would be great to be able to just go out there and be able to run against those loaded boxes. But when you have a passing game as good as what the Dolphins have, you don't have to do that, right? Like this isn't a team that is so heavy one way or the other that you have to try to force your hand into something the defense is trying to stop already. So, we've seen the run game work well. It's been nice to see it with Tua returning, that the pass game is, it's not getting the big plays that we saw last year, but it's still picking up in terms of the efficiency so that when a team does want to bring another guy down the box, they want to make running the ball harder, that's fine. We're just going to, keep throwing the ball and be hitting it at, 70-75% rate and still be, moving the ball, putting points on the board, and just continuing to play efficient complementary football. Defensively, same idea there. When the offense gets out big, it really makes it easier on Anthony Weaver being able to call defenses. And one thing that I kind of noticed that I thought was neat was that, they really, sure, they sent some blitzes, and you saw Ramsey get a few free rushes there, but a lot of those pass down situations, they weren't, getting into those exotic blitzes. They were simply shifting everybody over to one side and lining Chop Robinson out as far as you could on the outside, and in just getting him into solo situations. And it's awesome to have, you know, Chop is not a perfect player yet, rookie, still can improve against the run game. But when you can get up big and you can isolate him like that is a very good situation for the Dolphins defense to be in. So I definitely like the fact that, when we get up in those situations, that we don't have to continue to, try to outsmart the offense, that we have the personnel that you can do that you can shift everybody over and just isolate your best rusher with their tackle and make him work in space, and we can still win that very often.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of the times it kind of looked like I'm going to show my age here a little bit. On some of those real old Madden games, when you would take your defensive end and you could line them up just like 20 yards out, and it was just an instant sack every time. That's kind of what it felt like with Chop Robinson today. And I see we got some people trickling in here. We got Jeffrey talking about one touchdown on a 4th and 16. And even on that play, Chop Robinson was in a headlock for pretty much half the time. Drake May was dropping back there. It's a really good team win overall. You look at it, and there's really not too many weak points. I thought the offensive line held up very well for most of the game in pass protection today. I thought Tua was really good to elite. I think it's weird to me where we're kind of doing this whole last year we did this, can the Dolphins, execute long drives? And now we're kind of doing this, can the Dolphins hit on explosive plays? And it just feels like kind of a lack of object permanence from the fan base here. Like, just because you're not seeing it right now doesn't mean it can't be done. I look at the play to Odell Beckham was a vertical passing concept downfield, right in his hands, just happened to drop it. They can hit on those plays. They've got the players to do it. They've got the quarterback to do it. And it will happen at some point this year. It's only a matter of time. This is baby steps. Those in-breaking routes become available 15, 20 yards downfield. And then you expand to the next level, which is going to be those deep shots. But this is kind of the ideal right now, because I feel like it's been a steady progression from what you saw in Arizona to what you saw in Buffalo to what you saw in LA versus Vegas, now versus New England. It just feels like this is a team that's really trending in a positive direction, and it comes from a place that isn't. I mean, it feels very real right now in the way that they're doing it. This isn't 31-0 because you hit on 4 splash plays and your offense was stalled out the rest of the game. This is 30. You were up 31-0 because you were dominant throughout the entire ball game. And this is a New England team that had been playing some pretty good football over the last few weeks. I understand that they're 3-8, and I get that. I know that they're not a good football team, but they had been playing pretty decent football over the last few weeks. I saw a lot of people, on social media kind of treating this as a trap game. I think it speaks to the mental toughness of the Dolphins that they weren't looking ahead to Green Bay on Thanksgiving when they absolutely could have been doing so. And I look at the rest of the AFC playoff picture, and I'm looking at the Dolphins schedule, and I'm looking at Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa hurt for the 49ers. I'm looking at Houston letting Will Levis, of all people, carve them up at home. I mean, if Will Levis can do that, Tua should be able to be just fine. So I'm looking at this and I'm really thinking this week or the upcoming week versus Green Bay is kind of the not that it's the end all be all, but it really feels like the largest of the three tests. Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, I agree with that completely. As you were saying, I was kind of thinking that, like, when you're playing these teams like the Raiders and like the Patriots, like, you don't want to have to open up the playbook completely. You don't want to have to show all your cards. And, you talked about the lack of explosive plays. Obviously, you don't want the players to show up in a game like today and take the opponent lightly and, let them hang around longer than what they should. But at the same time, from a coaching perspective, like, NFL coaches, good NFL coaches, are thinking, 3-4 weeks ahead when they're making these play calls, right? So, against teams like the Raiders, against teams like the Patriots, this is where hopefully McDaniel has been, kind of, you know, dropping some leaves there for the Packers to chase, right? And my hope is that, because we've had a couple of easier opponents and McDaniel has hopefully been doing that, maybe against the Packers is where we see that break open, right? Maybe that's where, instead of it being, Waddle, or not Waddle, Odell on that pick route that he, got rubbed and dropped, right? Maybe that's Tyreek now, and he catches it in a full sprint and it's a 70-yard touchdown. So, that's my hope. I agree completely that the Packers are going to be the biggest test. When you look at the defense, Chop has obviously had a big 2 weeks, but we've also been playing ahead, and that's, where he's going to thrive. We're playing against the Packers. They run an offense more like we do, where they're going to be running that wide zone stuff, and they're going to be testing him, right? So that's going to be a big test for him to show whether he is, really truly taking that step into being an every down player, or if he is just a mismatch when we're playing ahead with a lead. So I do think that this week is going to be by far the biggest test they've had since Tua has come back, as far as, what they are going forward. It's not a game that if they don't win, that, the season's over, but it definitely goes a long way if they do win towards, making the rest of the season a lot smoother of a ride. But I do think that the way that they play and they compete, they've got the chance to eliminate a lot of narratives this week, right? You're going on the road, you're playing a good team, you're playing in cold weather, you're playing in prime time, right? If you go out there and put a good showing out there, you can kind of, knock off some of the naysayers and the stuff that they continue to cling on to with this team. And for good reason. Like, this team, I can't sit here and say that they're going to come out here and they're going to blow out the Packers. Certainly good hints, not for a blowout, right? But I expect them to come out there. I expect them to play well. If they go up there and they get blown out by, 3 scores, I'm going to be really disappointed in, the way that, what we've seen the last couple weeks couldn't translate up there at all. But, you know, again, if they do go up there, if they do win, and if they, let's put it out there, if they win convincingly with the way that they've been playing, right, then you can turn a lot of opinions on, the remainder of the season getting back to 500 like that.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna have pretty much all the focus on them. They're it's easily the only game on Thanksgiving that's going to be, any good really, at least on paper. Um I do want to bring up this comment here because I think it opens up an interesting can of worms here. Obviously, we see the Skyler stuff. Should Chris Greer be on the phone with Daniel Jones this afternoon?
I mean, I forget who it was that tweeted that pointed out that the handoff really wasn't that far off, supposedly, that it was more of Jalen Wright's fault than it was Skylar Thompson's. That is what it is. The question becomes simply, if something were to happen to Tua, does throwing Daniel Jones in there and letting Daniel Jones create give you a better option than what Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley does. There is no backup quarterback, Daniel Jones included, that's going to come in and be able to run the same offense as what Tua does, right? So if you're going to sign Daniel Jones, you're going to try to hope that you can run the same offense. It's going to be the same disaster that it was with Skylar Thompson. But the question becomes whether or not, if you throw Daniel Jones in there, can you give him one read and then tell him to create? And I don't know the answer to that. There's also the aspect of it that, a backup quarterback in the NFL has, a lot more responsibilities than just showing up when the starter gets injured. The backup quarterback is a big part of the starting quarterback's preparation and even the communication in between drives, right? So, am I more confident that Daniel Jones can come in here and pick up enough of the offense to be better than Skylar Thompson? Not convincingly. I don't think it's a must, a no-brainer to do, kind of like Dodson was a no-brainer when he was cut for the Dolphins to add to this roster. So I don't think that Daniel Jones is a no-brainer in that sense, but I think it's definitely something that they should be, kicking the tires on and trying to make that judgment.
And speaking of, well, for one, I do believe Daniel Jones probably would be a wise investment just from a talent perspective of he would easily be the best option behind Tua. And if you can get it at the minimum right now, you're not going to get a better backup, at any other point in the season. But like you said, I don't think that there's really anybody that can run this offense to the degree that Tua is running it right now. I mean, this is the second week in a row he's got somebody to jump off sides. It really feels different than when he was humming in previous years. And I know, maybe this is just short, lack of long-term memory here, but it really, it felt like there were times over the last 2 years in Mike McDaniel's offense where motion was almost used as a crutch for Tua, where he would say, okay, I see what's happening pre-snap, and he would almost make the decision where he was throwing the football based on what he saw pre-snap, and he would do it without even reading the field first. Whereas right now, the motion is an accent to he's genuinely making quick decisions post-snap with the football. And it's just on a different level than what it has been over the last couple of years. And that's what I think is probably the most translatable in those big games against the Green Bay. And what I'm hoping right now is, at some point, teams are going to make the decision, hey, we can't let Jonnu Smith beat us. He's going to be on the scouting report to that degree at some point if he keeps doing what he's doing. I don't know if that cutoff is this week against Green Bay and they really make a game plan against him. But I feel like the second teams start doing that is when you see Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle really start to open things up. And we saw it with Waddle today. But I think you'll see it hit another level once defenses really start keying in on, hey, we've got to treat Jonnu Smith as a threat on the level of the rest of these guys that the Dolphins have at their disposal from a weapons perspective. And once that happens, I'm not sure what teams can do with the offense aside from, just hoping their defensive line can beat the Dolphins offensive line off the snap pretty quickly. It feels like the finishing touches are almost there.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said before, this is, we talk about complementary football from an offense and defense and special teams perspective and, those units working together. But there's also complementary football within those individual units as well. And that's the way that complementary football on the offense works, right? For the longest time now, we've been, burning teams with Tyreek and Waddle downhill, and teams adjusted to that. So we went to the running game, and the running game was putting up 150 yards plus per game, and teams are adjusting to that. Well, if you're still trying to put a lid on the guys over the top and you're committing more into the running game, right now, that's going to open up that intermediate stuff, and that's where Janu has been feasting, where some of Waddle's targets today were hitting as well, right? So now, what are you going to give up, right? Are you going to just say that you're okay with that, or are you going to let those linebackers play a little deeper and give up the run, right? Or do you say the Dolphins haven't hit the ball deep for a while, and we're going to take our chances, taking away the things they've done successfully this year, being running the ball in the intermediate stuff, and let the Dolphins test you deep. That'll be interesting to see how Green Bay and the teams forward do that, and whether they, what they pick. Defensive coordinators will tell you there is no perfect defense. There is no defense that you can go out there that's going to stop every single thing. So when you have an offense that is capable of taking advantage of those, then that makes it, that much tougher for a defense to stop. And when you add on a quarterback like Tua that has the ability to adjust on the fly, right? He's got full access to that playbook. I'm sure that there are, multiple plays being called in the huddle, or multiple adjustments that are available at the line of scrimmage, option routes, stuff like that, even if the play call that comes in, there's the first play up at the line of scrimmage is not there. There is now ability to adjust before the end of that play clock to say, okay, they pack the line of scrimmage. They've got Tyreek out there one-on-one. Okay, we're just going to let Tyreek run deep and see if that guy can keep up. So, it's having the talent is one thing, but having the experience in the system and the quarterback that, has the ability to get to those different plays, should be successful for the rest of the season. But we'll obviously see how that works against some tougher matchups coming up here.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything to this point has been positive, and it's been a very positive day. But there is one thing that kind of lingers in the back of my mind here with this team. And I've thought it was odd the entire time, and maybe it's the fan base kind of shaping the narrative. But he didn't look great in the early part of today's game either. And some of the answers Mike McDaniel's been giving, it really feels like the team is treating Patrick McMorris as a returning starter when he comes back. The way that they're talking about it, the way that he's one of the guys that's getting the biggest updates. It just, and I mean, Jordan Poyer played an okay game. Obviously, he had the couple of moments in the first quarter where he gets run over, he gets stiff-armed. It doesn't look pretty. Do you think that that's a call that are they on the verge of making that call with Jordan Poyer? Are we in a David Long situation with him right now?
I don't think so, because if we were, then I feel like Marcus May would have gotten more of an opportunity than what he has, because I felt like Marcus May, played okay. I thought that Marcus May played better than what Jordan Poyer has when he had those opportunities when Poyer and Holland were out earlier in the year. I know that when asked about it, Weaver mentioned, it sounds like Poyer is, even though he may not be playing great after the whistle, the stuff before the whistle in terms of being able to get guys lined up, getting guys in the right spot. So we're not having, a ton of blown assignments. We obviously had one today on that long pass where Kohu, didn't seem to stay with his guy, right? But so having, there's value there as well. We talk about Tua on the offensive side and that calming presence of being able to get everybody in the right spot. And, I think that is how Weaver views Poyer on the defensive side. So, could there be if Poyer doesn't play well, could he lose snaps? I do think that's possible. I don't know that's going to be McMorris, a low round rookie draft pick coming back from injury. I'm not sure how McMorris gets onto the active roster right now. unless they decide that, they're going to just be done with May and get rid of May. But, Holland is obviously going to be active. Like I said, I don't think that Poyer is necessarily in danger of losing, a starting spot. Campbell has so much special teams value, right? So I think it's going to be, does McMorris bring more special teams value to than Marcus May? And I think that's going to be his way onto the active roster, the game day active roster. So I don't see McMorris as being a guy that they're going to bring in and start, but obviously could be a potential.
It seems odd to me that he's even. I mean, he's been. I mean, at this point, I feel like he's almost considered. And maybe this is just coach speak from Mike McDaniel, and we're all kind of being, we're all kind of being baited here into thinking this stuff. But just the fact that it feels like he's a lock to be activated when his window is up and get onto the active roster, being a 6th round pick, considering the fact that they only have such a a limited number of players that can come back from IR. It feels like that in itself kind of speaks volumes. Like, you're not doing that for a player that you don't see contributing at all. So if he does come back, there's going to be some kind of role on the field for him. I'm not sure what it is. It could be, as a special teamer. Also, speaking of special teams, Jason Sanders continues to rebuild some of that confidence that the fan base has lost in him over the last couple of years. Another decent day for him. But it does feel like there is a role for Patrick McMorris on the defense. I'm not sure what it is exactly, or on special teams, rather. But it'll be interesting to see if he does get activated as well. And the last thing that I do want to get into here, and we're running right up against 30 minutes here, and the Heat game is starting soon, so I'm going to cede all that airtime to Ethan and those guys over there at some point here. But the defensive line over the last few weeks, they've doubled their sack total over the last 3 games and then some. And that's without Bradley Chubb, whose return is seemingly on the horizon at some point here. Not likely Thursday night, but possibly the week afterwards against the Jets. If you wanted to give him a softer landing, perhaps. It just feels like you've got Holland kind of coming around right now. You've got Bradley Chubb on the horizon. You've got Chop Robinson starting to break out. You've got Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell creating havoc up the middle. And also, I don't think Deshaun Hand and Benito Jones get enough credit for how good they are as depth pieces along the defensive line. It just feels like this defense is kind of rounding into a really, really solid group right now, right when you would want them to start clicking. It is so often over the last couple of years, it feels like the Dolphins peaked extremely early in the season, and it's refreshing to kind of see that, and this isn't just exclusive to the defense. It's refreshing to see just the team, all of a sudden it feels like they're playing their best football heading into late November, December, January, where they can, make that push towards the playoffs. But getting back to the defensive line, they don't even have Bradley Chubb yet. This pass rush could be just really disruptive down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of that is the depth that they've developed. You talked about Benito Jones and Deshaun Hand. You look at Tyus Bowser playing meaningful snaps. You saw Quentin Bell getting some additional snaps as well. So, when you start to build that kind of depth, like, most teams have some pretty good players. And we've seen that in the past with the Dolphins where they had good defensive linemen, but they had to play the entire game. And, there's not a whole lot of Zach Sealers and Christian Wilkins out there that can go out there and consistently play 85, 90% of the snaps and be effective late in the game. So, when you build that depth of role players that, those aren't the guys you're going to have out there on third down, right? But if you can get, Chop Robinson, Calais Campbell off the field on first and second down, then you get to third down and be able to put those fresh bodies out there. Like that's when those guys can really feast. Emmanuel Ogba obviously being a starter right now. Just a lot of guys that are, more role players, but it's not, in the past you had players that, when they went out there, it was like, oh crap, you see the guy jogging on the field and you're like, okay, well, they're going to run the ball right at him or they're going to throw the ball right at him. And you just, it was inevitable. And you're not seeing that with, this defense and specifically the defensive line. But, when you're looking at the secondary, when you got guys like Cam Smith and Storm Duck that are coming in now, when you get to your third safety, you got Marcus May, you had Anthony Walker go down. Now you got Terrell Dodson hopping in. So, that depth, I think, is where, that's coming in. So now when you come back and you add a Bradley Chubb in there, right, he doesn't have to come in and, be a 70% snap taker. He can come in and he can just be a pass rush specialist because the defense has already been established without him. So I think that the depth that they've created there is a big part of the reason that they're being able to peak. They're not wearing down late in the season here. You still got fresh bodies and you have guys that are playing meaningful snaps and being effective in those snaps.
Yeah, I mean, this is like I said, this is kind of exactly where you want the Dolphins to be at this point in the season. Not record wise. I would love to see that they would have won a couple more of those games with Tua out, and we could be talking about them sitting at 7-4, or maybe even 8-3, and kind of talking about potential ways to win the division still at this point. But this is a good second. This is a good second considering where they were at 2-6. That's going to be it for us on Postgame. Dolphins 34, Patriots 15. Thank you guys for coming in, watching, leaving your comments. We appreciate all of it. Remember, promo code 5 on Prize Picks for a $50 bonus for your first lineup of $5 or more. We will see you guys Tuesday night with Pulse of Fins Nation. Lewis will be back to host that. And then at least I'm operating as if I'm going to be ready for pregame on Thanksgiving. I don't know about postgame. But pregame, I will be available for. I'm going to have dinner early, so I should be locked and loaded, ready to go for pregame Thanksgiving night. Dolphins, Packers. That's going to be an entertaining one. What's your Thanksgiving situation looking like? Because we eat probably 2-3 o'clock. We're early Thanksgiving eaters. I don't know.
Yeah, so we are a big sports family, and my daughter has gotten really big into field hockey. She's a goalie, and so we live in Pennsylvania, and we are traveling down to Richmond for a field hockey tournament where she is going to guest play as a goalie for a team from Massachusetts. So we're actually going to be driving for a decent chunk of the day on Thursday, and then next 3 days playing in field hockey tournaments.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I mean, the driving, I'm sure, is going to be exhausting, but that's definitely a lot of fun. Congratulations to you guys. Congratulations to her. And then we will see you guys, like I said, Tuesday night for Pulse of Fins Nation. Thursday night, pregame, postgame. I'm sure we'll be there somewhere, perhaps even just in spirit. But thank you guys, and we will see you next time.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.